So Mark here from Rock and Load. This evening I am joined by the lovely Cindy-Louise. Cindy-Louise is a South African musician who's currently residing in the Netherlands, and she releases her next single on Friday, October 27th, called Innocence, and we're here to talk about her musical journey thus far. Cindy-Louise, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. So listen, I was reading your bio, quite an interesting wee sort of backstory to you and your journey that you've taken to get where you are today. So tell us a little bit, first and foremost, about maybe your growing up, your childhood, and what influenced you maybe in the sort of musical genres.
Well, basically, I was always surrounded by music. My parents are very musical, even though my mom plays the organ, but my dad can't sing and he can't play anything. So shame, bless his heart, he tries.
Yeah.
And basically, my mom took me to the West End Mamma Mia one day when we went to London on like some family kind of trip. And I saw these people on stage and I thought, oh my goodness, that's what I want to do with my life. Like, I just want to sing, I want to dance, I want to entertain people. I just felt this joy come in me that I've never lost from that moment. I've tried to do other career paths, but it's just really not for me.
Yeah.
And I've just been bitten by the music bug. So at this point, it's not a lifestyle choice, it is my life.
Yeah. And what age were you when you saw Mamma Mia?
I think I was about 11, maybe 12.
Yeah. Quite I suppose, probably, as you say, quite an age to come across that, and then obviously being enveloped in that world, you'd quite just, I'm sure, quite a shock to the system to really sort of, especially in the musical theatre as well, because they're always such a big production.
Yes, exactly. And especially because coming from South Africa, I hadn't actually been exposed to a lot of live performances.
Yeah.
I did a bit of like choir when I was younger and those kind of like little things, but I never actually thought I could sing. It was just randomly one day I was sitting in chapel because in school we had like Friday chapel, and I was singing the hymns, and all of a sudden like everyone just stopped singing and everyone was looking at me and I thought like, wow, what's going on here? And from that moment I thought, oh, okay, well, apparently I can sing and I have a voice.
Yeah, only person that could hold a note.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though, just talking about that musical theatre thing, because obviously I've been to a couple of things. I wouldn't go to it a lot, but when you do go to it, you do genuinely appreciate the scale of all of that, the grandeur of it, because it's, if I'm probably more guilty of attending more rock concerts and stuff like that there than anything else. So when I step outside the genre as well, it's quite an education, because obviously when you see, say, a country artist perform or pop artist, and you see everything that they bring to a performance, it's totally different sometimes to what you're used to. So it's really good to sort of stretch your musical sort of muscles sometimes and embrace yourself in something you're not really that comfortable with.
Well, that's exactly my biggest thing, because for me, it was completely the opposite. I grew up, my parents were very much lovers of like classical music, jazz. My mom was a huge lover of like Celine Dion, so that's pop. And all of a sudden I got married. Well, not all of a sudden, but I got married and I was introduced to this whole new world because my husband actually listens to a lot of like heavy metal rock music.
Yeah.
And at first I was kind of like, I don't know, opera singing, or this is more like my kind of thing. And we immigrated to the Netherlands and he took me to a Slipknot concert. And all of a sudden, like there was a mosh pit, there was like, I was right in the middle of everything. And thinking like, oh my gosh, this would scar me for life. It was actually the opposite reaction. I thought, wow, what a show, what showmanship these people are doing. And from that moment, I just started like engulfing like rock music, heavy metal music, all of that kind of genre. And this is like in my late 20s.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a phase. Now it's just an obsession.
Yeah. It's funny because, again, like you say, maybe just coming from the other side into the rock world, I'm sure it is a bit of an eye opener, because it's a lifestyle, it really is, a big community of people. And I suppose there's probably other genres like that, country and stuff, where people really envelop the lifestyle and they live and breathe it every single day of their lives. So I'm sure throwing yourself into metal and rock in your mid-20s is a shock to the system.
Yeah, I actually really love it, especially because now knowing that whole scene, I find that I love that even more than I do any other genre, for the pure fact of the audience.
Yeah.
Because I literally just go to any show and I literally make friends. And all of a sudden, like if you fall like in mosh pit, everyone picks you up and everyone's having a good time and no one's judging you and everyone's just so much fun. And you would think completely the opposite, because a lot of people, a book by its cover kind of metaphor comes to mind, but everyone is so incredibly nice and honest and just so chilled to be around. Most of my best friends I literally met at these concerts.
Yeah, it's true. It's a very misunderstood genre. I think, misrepresented all the time because of the nature of maybe the lyrics and everything else that goes along with it. But it's generally just a big community of people who love music.
Exactly. And I feel like they also express themselves so openly. And that's why I actually started writing more towards that space now, because I just felt like I had all this kind of like pent up anger and emotion and, sadness, all of that kind of stuff mixed into one. And I thought like no other genre is going to be able to like handle what I'm feeling like other than like kind of rock music.
Yeah, I can get that. Absolutely get that. Because I'm sure trying to get rid of that angst through jazz isn't necessarily going to work.
Yeah, exactly. Can't stay smooth all the time, hey?
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about that musical education. Then, like I seen you went to Italy in 2018, 2019 and studied out there. Was that opera that you were looking at?
Yes, so I am a trained opera singer. I did all my vocal training that way, and I also went to university for it. I went to Italy twice. They have a wonderful program where you get to basically perform your roles all across Sicily. And I did really cool roles. The one was Susanna from the Marriage of Figaro, and the one was Despina from Cosi, tutte. And they were very challenging for me because, of course, like all of a sudden you just have to remember a 3-hour opera out of your head in a completely different language. But it's very interesting to do because it kind of pushes you to a new level that you don't actually think you can cope with, but you can. So anybody that is in that kind of like industry or wanting to explore that, I would definitely advise that they do the Mediterranean Opera Festival. It's very cool. It's run by Jack Lavigne, and he's a really well-known tenor from America.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've sort of heard of other type things along those lines, not necessarily of opera, but in the classical range. Say, for example, classical guitarists who would travel to the other side of the world and study under like a grand master type thing, a really intense sort of course. And it seems to be something, obviously, I suppose it maybe goes along with the discipline of classical music, because we're obviously generic pop music and stuff, people can dip in and out of it, but you probably have to be quite dedicated and stick to that rigid sort of formula with classical. So you're probably expected to be on certain levels, I'm sure.
Well, exactly. Especially when you get to this program, you have to be able to know your whole role off book, which is like for a role like Susanna is 3 hours. And like the coaches don't pity you or, they do. But if you're not ready, they just say, well, sorry, then you're not going on stage. And that's the end of the story. Yeah. So I do feel like quite happy that I did do that in my life, because anything anybody throws at me, I can kind of handle at this point, which is really great. But it's very like hard on your vocals too, because for me at that point in time, I was doing warm-ups, I think like 2 hours a day. So just to keep everything like loose and ready to go. So that helps later on in life too with technique.
I'm sure. Are you familiar with another girl called The Charismatic Voice on YouTube?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, a vocal, an opera singer as well, who sort of now got into the rock and metal sort of genres, and she sort of analyzes vocal techniques. It's interesting watching somebody like her as well. I'm sure, like yourself, you must then start to look at music, especially rock music and everything else, with a different set of eyes, almost ears, from your training.
Exactly. And I think it's also you see it in a point of, it's not that you want to recreate a certain sound, but when you want to bring a certain sound out of yourself, you're more able to manipulate your voice in that stage because you understand your vocal anatomy a lot better, and having to have gone through that training for certain roles or certain techniques in order to sing things. So I do feel like pretty happy, because it's not only that I basically analyze my vocals in a certain way to manipulate it, but when you start going into the recording studio, you start analyzing your vocals in that way too, and not relying on other instrumentation or other kind of adaptions to bring what you need and to bring the fullness. And for instance, like when I do a song, especially in this new genre that I'm exploring, I sing everything live. And like my the person who does my mixing and mastering doesn't have to add anything because all the vocals are live vocals, and I also don't have to get some like a session singer in to do it. So
Yeah.
I really like that, because then I feel my music is a lot more complete and a lot fuller and a lot more organic. So yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting take. And what about your songwriting processes then? Like, so obviously with the training and the background that you have, how sort of comfortable have you found it sort of trying to find yourself a space that sort of represents yourself as a musician?
I think it's quite interesting because when I start writing music, I try to forget all my training and just kind of go off like what I'm feeling or where I want to place certain emotions, and I go off that. I always kind of try start with the lyrics, and I find myself always starting with the chorus and writing everything around that, or like a phrase of wording that I've somehow come across maybe in a book, or I've manipulated that phrase, like I like this word and that word. I really concentrate a lot on the lyrics, even when I listen to other artists, because sometimes you'll listen to, like, for instance, Sleep Token, you'll think, oh, that's just like writing genius the way you've put these words together, because they flow so naturally on the tongue. And that also goes back to, like, in sense, classical singing, because when you are busy studying that, you do different languages, French, Italian, and German, and you see like how the dictation changes and what exactly like affects that. And I find that I use that a lot in my singing too when I'm writing, especially when I'm busy with words. It's not only that the lyrics have to rhyme or do something, it's I want them to be clever and well thought out. I want them, some of them, to be like metaphorical and some of them theatrical, but I also want them to be 100% honest and me.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine. Does the training at all hinder in any shape or form, do you think, or does it give you more freedom?
I personally think it gives me more freedom, because whenever I just don't want to use the training, I just kind of forget about it. When I started writing, it did hinder me, I must admit, because I was concentrating more on my vocal technique and making it sound pretty in a sense, rather than like getting out what I wanted to say. And I think that went with my whole writing structure. So it's really fun to see my music, because you can literally see me develop as an artist from my first single to my latest single, and how much more I care about just getting out what I want to say and being a lot more honest. I think it's very difficult being a songwriter too, because you don't always want to tell people exactly what you're feeling or what you're thinking, because everyone always has an opinion of what they think, and especially those closest to you. You don't want to let them know you're hurting or something. But I found a kind of freedom in just expressing exactly who I am. And a lot of people kind of get this shock of, oh my gosh, but you always look so like happy, or you always sound very like high pitched in the sense of joyful. And maybe that's not what I want to be perceived as anymore, because I don't want to put a fake self in front of how I'm actually feeling and just say I'm okay when maybe I'm not. Maybe I am happy, and then I'm more than happy to say that too, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's, I suppose it is one of those things, you know, sort of showing off that vulnerability as a human being, as a musician, and as you say, then the funny thing is as well is that how people interpret songs is it could be absolutely the wrong thing of where you've came from as well, and you can't control that, because people will always read into lyrics or totally misunderstand the message behind the song, you know, and it's open up for interpretation once it's out there on the internet as well.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, it's also really cool because sometimes I feel that especially when a music video comes out, I'm very happy that I am an independent artist, because I get 100% control of like how I want something to come out. And I will always show my parents like my music video or something before it comes out. Sometimes I get like a bit kind of shocked, and they'll kind of be like, "We support you and we love you, but what is this?" You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I'll
yeah.
have explain to them like, well, this is how I'm feeling and this is what this interprets. And they're like very conservative, so especially with the rock music coming out, it's quite like a shock to them, especially.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a slight sort of almost like slight EDM vibe going on in the background of your music as well. So there's like obviously the electronica sound. Your sound obviously isn't too heavy on the rock. There's like an influence definitely there, but you know it's quite subtle.
Exactly. And I think it's maybe because I wanted to be more theatrical in a sense. I always see my music going into some sort of kind of like game, or maybe some sort of movie or series or something like that. And I think it's also important to like mention in the fact that I am a solo artist. So like if I perform live, it could be with a band, but it could also be solo because
Yeah.
I'm just me. Sense. So when I have this electronic aspect to it, I just feel more comfortable of people knowing that like it's not live musicians playing other than the guitar, because I do actually have someone play the guitar for me in most of my music. So he's fantastic, Eric Carber. You guys should definitely go check him out.
Yeah, yeah. And so tell me then, I seen you immigrated to the Netherlands in 2019. So that was just obviously just before the pandemic. That must have been a very hard time because obviously things didn't go exactly as planned.
No, definitely not. I feel like it was really a smack in the face. Although, to be fair, all of my 20s have been a bit of a smack in the face. I even asked my husband the other day, I'm like, how did you feel when you were 20? Because he's 6 years older than me. And he said, like, I'm literally at the same point. So at least it's normal. It's normal,
Yeah,
everyone. But it was very difficult because I moved here and I was alone because I had to basically do all of these kind of government things in order to get my husband here, because he isn't of Dutch nationality and I am.
mm,
And all of a sudden, I couldn't continue my studies. So I couldn't go on to do my master's. The course that I did want to do didn't accept me. So I was like, okay, well, then that's a no go. And then I had to start working full time. And I literally did any job I could find. And at that point, it was working in a factory.
yeah,
And being a musician, like, I mean, that's not my skill point, hey?
yeah, yeah,
But I made it work, you know. Eventually, I was super happy that I could quit that job and become a full-time musician. But it was very like difficult starting because I was also working nights, and I would work a night and then have to go to the studio the next morning and record to do my debut album, because I just felt that I had to do something. And if I didn't do anything with music, I would just spiral in this deep
yeah,
pit of depression. So, yeah, that
yeah.
was
It
fun.
sounds like you should be into the blues rather than the jazz.
I'm telling you. Well, there's a bit of an R&B vibe, you know, a bit of an R&B vibe.
Yeah. And how have you found then, well, post-pandemic, suppose, how's the Netherlands been, and how's the music scene for you over there?
I feel that it's only actually opening up now. So I started doing festivals and live shows in the January this year. So it's been picking up now, and I've been booked for some festivals, one being Fantasy Fest, which I absolutely love doing. They have 2 festivals in the year. And I really feel like that's totally my audience, because everyone's in some kind of planet like I am. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It sounds like Europe, all right.
Yeah, exactly. Get to
And
dress up like Harry and everything.
yeah, 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 yeah. And obviously, you have your new music coming out on October 27th. So tell us a little bit about the backstory to Innocence.
Yes, so Innocence is like quite a long project for me. I've been working on it for 2 years, actually. It's, I think, the longest song I've held that I haven't basically produced and released. And that's more just because I knew exactly what I wanted the lyrics to sound like. So I had all of that set, but I didn't know what kind of genre, what kind of sound could hold those lyrics, because they're quite like explicit and painful, and it's kind of a story about like suffering. And that's why it took me so long to decide what I wanted it to sound like. And once I did do it with my producer, who's Cali Beats, I still felt like at the end it still wasn't right. And then I got Eric Carber to literally like write something over that for guitar. And from basically combining all of that along with a hell of a lot of layers of vocals, I finally found like that's exactly the sound I want. So yeah, it's been quite a journey with this song, especially because it's a little bit different than what I usually produce, and also the honesty in it. It's like it is very much a song about suffering, because it's about my personal journey, just feeling like all of a sudden I'm in this kind of environment with my parents and I'm safe and guarded, and now all of a sudden I'm alone, and I've had to like go through a lot of kind of like experiences which weren't pleasant. And I feel that from those experiences I've become a very different person in the sense of I'm not trusting anymore. I no longer feel that kind of innocent, unknowing joy from situations. I always have this kind of, I don't really trust, or I have to first suss out the situation before I can just have that, oh, okay, I'm sure it's totally okay. And that's what it kind of goes over. It's just this undying, no longer trusting people innocently.
Well, welcome to adulting. Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to adulting. Trust me, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so I was listening to it earlier on today, and you talked on a little bit about maybe overindulging in Evanescence as a band, and I could certainly pick up on sort of Amy Lee-esque sort of vocal runs and stuff like that there, and the way you maybe carried some of the notes, strong sort of powerful phrases and stuff like that there. So obviously the rock and metal is definitely seeping into your pores.
Yes, definitely. I've always been a massive fan of Evanescence, and especially with this song, I really wanted, that 2000s album that she brought out. I want that kind of sound in it. I don't want to necessarily, everyone compares everyone. I want my own sound, but I think it's good to kind of get inspiration from artists that you look up to and something that you want to sound like, because it makes it easier for you yourself to find your audience and for your audience to find you. Because music is simple, like you like it because you like it, and the people that like it, you're going to like too. And that's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be overly complicated in any shape or form. It could be 3 chords, an acoustic guitar, and a nice melody, and you'll just draw people in, won't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I always find it so fascinating how everyone that kind of likes the same thing just automatically draws together. I watch a lot of these TikTok films where someone's playing the piano and all of a sudden randomly someone's like, oh, I know that song, I want to sing with. And then a violinist all of a sudden comes out of nowhere too, and he also wants to play. I think musicians are naturally drawn to one another, and that brings happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more people should get involved in music, especially as picking up instruments and stuff like that there. They should be encouraging their kids to get involved, and it opens up just a totally different world, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it's such a great form of coping and release and having to deal with life, whether it's happy or sad or anxiety. I struggle a lot with being in crowded spaces, and sometimes I usually just hum to myself and I feel a whole lot better. And that has to do with the fact that whatever's going on in my head is calming down, but also the pure breathing that you do when you're singing. It's just normal, inhale, exhale, and that will calm you down automatically. So I always advise people to do that have anxiety too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great form of release, a cathartic process, really, even just playing an instrument, because the process of just progression, it's rewarding, self-rewarding as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Cool. And so I'm sure you're looking forward to the release then of Innocence.
Yes, I very much am. I'm excited to see what everyone thinks about it because, like I said, a lot of my friends actually are in heavy metal bands, and they usually listening to my kind of half pop rock kind of stuff. So this is going to be very in their face.
Get them to do a heavy metal cover version.
I mean, I'd be more than happy for them to do that. Hell yes, they should definitely get on that right away.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks for your time today. It's an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best with the release of the single.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on the show. I had a great time.
Yeah, pleasure. Just a reminder for everybody, so October 27th, check it out. Where can people find you on your socials?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm mostly active there, and I'm Cindy-Louise Official. Be sure to kind of check me out, have a follow, and send me a DM. I'd love to know what you think of my music.
Cool. Look, best luck again, Cindy-Louise, and we'll keep an eye on you in the future.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Thanks now.